Hello, I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com. Back with us again, Gerald Celente. He is the creator, founder of the Trends Journal. He's made some monster calls over the last several decades. And Gerald, your latest issue could have been two issues. It talks about the Middle East and about the economy. Let's start with the economy and the latest, 0.1%. Negative growth in the economy after all this money printing. Where do you see coming our way in 2013?
Well, it's our forecast that we made before these numbers came out. More of the same, but worse. None of this is working. All they're doing is printing money around the world, whether it's the U.S. with its quantitative easing, whether it's now the Bank of Japan printing out all this digital money not worth the paper it's not printed on, whether it's the European Central Bank buying bonds and infinitely and pumping money into the system through their scams called long-term refinancing operations or ongoing monetary transactions, whether it's the numbers coming out of China, how they're in trouble with the banks that can't pay back the loans that the government has pushed into the system to keep the stimulus going, and they're giving them more time to pay it back. So there's this fixation among the money junkies, the bankers, that they can't take any losses. So what they're doing is they're forcing the governments to keep funding them by flooding money into the system. So you have interest rates now at record lows. This is a grand experiment we've never seen before. But we know how it's going to end. It's going to end as they've tried to do it once before. And that is, you had the crash of 1929, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war. You have the same thing playing out now. You have the panic of '08. You have a Great Depression. There's a depression in Italy, a depression in Spain, a depression in Greece, a depression in Slovenia. There's a depression in Portugal, a depression in Ireland. There's depressions in the United States among tens of millions of people who have lost their jobs, can't find new ones, given up looking, and all those people have been thrown out of their homes. And now there are currency wars. Don't believe me? Listen to Abe, the new Prime Minister of Japan. There's a currency war, his words. Listen to Mervyn King, the outgoing president of the Bank of England. There's a currency war going on. Listen to Alex Verba, the head of UBS, former president of Bundesbank. There's a currency war going on. Listen to Guido Mantega out of Brazil. There's a currency war going on. And pick up the newspapers. There are real wars going on. There's one in Syria. There's one in Libya. There's one in Bahrain. There's one in Yemen. There's how many in Africa, Central Africa, Mali, name the country, there's a war. And then you have all the class warfare going on. So we're seeing this scenario play out the same. And when you follow the timelines, we're now in the late 1930s.
Well, just before World War II, and we're approaching World War III. I want to come back to the war question in a minute. Before, I want to kind of wrap up the economic question. You wrote something in your winter journal that, gold's coming back, baby. Gold is coming back into the monetary system. Is that what you're saying with all this money printing? Ultimately, aren't all these countries going to have to back their whatever currency they're going to have in the future with some kind of gold or percentage of gold?
I believe so, yes. And look what's going on now in Switzerland. The banks won't let people store their money in the banks over there because ostensibly they're saying that it boosts their balance sheets and they have to have more money to back their bad loans, essentially. That's not the reason I believe at all. They're making it more and more difficult for people to buy gold. And I believe they're driving down the price of gold. Is that a conspiracy theory? I don't believe so, and I'll tell you why. I just ran through all the numbers that are going on with the money printing game. All the trillions of dollars. You began this by saying how terribly the United States economy did last year. What did it go up, about 2%? About 1.5, 1.2% the year before?
It's if you believe the government, numbers. I mean, the best they can make it look in this latest quarter was down 0.1%. That's the best they can make it look with all of this $85 billion a month money printing, 0% interest rates, phony accounting, FASB suspended in 2009, and we're getting negative growth. That's an OMG moment.
That's right. So now you know it's not working. You mentioned this, the $85 billion a month the Fed is pumping in, buying government securities. Now, what's going to happen when this thing starts collapsing? People are going to be going into gold. They should have been going into it already, in my belief. Why not? As I said, the game is rigged. How can I say that? Hey, how about that $300 trillion worth of games that were rigged by the LIBOR scandal? That's right. We know, everyone knows it is a fact. This isn't theory. They rigged the interest rates. So if they're rigging the interest rates, if all this insider trading's going on, if the Feds are doing all these deals that we don't know about, that we only found out a little while ago, you remember that, what was it, about 27 trillion they were pumping into the economy, unbeknownst to us, since the Panic of '08 began, and we only heard about it because of that one-time reporting that was Ron Paul was basically responsible for making that happen, to give the people a little something, to see that there was some transparency. So I believe the gold game is being rigged, because who would want to buy this useless money? And by the way, again, that's the only reason I see why the economy is picking up at all. Look at housing. Why are people buying houses? I can only say for myself, why am I investing in real estate? Because I'm borrowing money at almost nothing. And I believe it's going to be devalued. And I'll be paying it back with cheap money. And the terms they're giving me are phenomenal. And even covering closing costs. So that's what's keeping the game going.
When does gold turn around, when they're done suppressing the price? Isn't it going to ultimately flip? Because I know you're a big gold investor, and it's going to, be like holding a ball trying to hold a ball under the bottom of the swimming pool, the deep end of the pool. At some point, you have to let go of the ball.
I believe gold is going to break through when the governments decide they have enough restrictions, as you're seeing what's going on in Switzerland. I mean, I used to call the Swiss the money cockroaches of the world. And I used to invest in Swiss francs. And then I bailed out of the market when they started to peg it to the euro. And now, of course, the Swiss are, they're leaking information, who's keeping money where, and who has it there. And also, of course, now they're increasing the fees to store gold there. So what I believe they're going to do is they're going to put more and more restrictions and making it more and more difficult for people to buy gold. They're going to keep driving down the price. When they have enough people out of the market and the price is low enough, I believe then they will come to an agreement, repeg the price of gold. Who knows? I believe it'll be well over $2,000, more like $5,000 an ounce, and the people will be frozen out of the market.
Now this brings us to war. So we've had the same kind of scenario leading up to World War II. We had a market crash. We had a currency war. We had all this terrible depressions. And now we have, as the Bible says, wars and rumors of wars all over Syria, Libya, Mali, Algeria. There's a possible threat of Iran with Israel and Iran. It's a mess. In your estimation, the latest, look at the Middle East just shows that war could break out any part of the Middle East and inflame the whole area, including all the way across North Africa. What do you think about the war scenario?
Look at the Trends Journal. Begins with war. We go on, about 16 pages of all about the wars going on around the world. You have psychopaths in charge, and that's all it is. These are crazy people. I mean, how successful do they have to be? Look at the great job, of success that they create to create more wars. How could people let them get away with this? I say that, of course, facetiously. It's been a disaster in Iraq. What did it cost? $1 trillion, 1 million people killed in Iraq, their country destroyed. Every day you pick the paper up, 8 killed, 20 killed, 30 killed, 100 killed. Then you look at what's going on. Oh, by the way, it was a good reason to have that war. You know, Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. They never existed, but who cares? And then, of course, there's the wonderful Afghan war, going on to be the longest war in American history. What's been accomplished there? Absolutely nothing, other than building up more hatred, killing a lot of people, and sacrificing the lives of our troops. Great. What are they showing now? 1 out of 2 American troops coming back either have a mental or a physical disability. So now they're going to start new ones. The United States has opened up. They have AFRICOM now in 35 African countries. The French have invaded Mali. They can't get over that trip, them French, you know? They can't get over the old French Sudan. Yeah, they had it only about, from 1896 to 1960. Oh, it couldn't be because of the uranium right next door in Niger that the Chinese and the people from India are going in and making deals with the dirt-poor Niger government to get their extraction of uranium out. Oh, it couldn't be because France has 75% of its energy coming from nuclear power, and now the people that own those natural resources want them for themselves. Could you imagine that? That's a good reason to bomb a country. And they could see the United States is opening up now fields in Africa to put drones in for more surveillance. And then you read the news coming out from the so-called terrorists to say, hey, there's going to be payback down the line. And we're warning you, it's going to hit France, it's going to hit the U.S., and other NATO countries that are supporting the interventions and occupations. And then, as I mentioned, look what's going on in Libya. Oh, I forgot to mention that brilliant strategic move by the U.S. military and the psychopaths in chief. You saw that wonderful clip of Hillary Clinton laughing. We came, he saw he died when she found out that Gaddafi was killed. I mean, my God, what kind of behavior is that? That's a human being? Boy, she makes the witches of Macbeth look tame. And so look at the job they did over in Libya, and look how it's all spilling over North Africa.
Well, then look at Syria. We're making basically kind of rumblings that we might go to war in Syria. You have John Kerry, who is now, the new Secretary of State, says we're not going to put up with a nuclear-armed Iran. To the Israelis' credit, they're a little worried about this nuclear material being stuck on a rocket and fired into Tel Aviv. I know there's lots of sin to go around all around, but there is a terrible situation where we could break into war with superpowers over a variety of countries, namely, first on the hit parade would be Syria. I mean, aren't you worried about that?
Well, look, I mean, name me the country that Iran has invaded. If my history gets it right, wasn't it the United States and the UK that overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953 and installed that brutal dictator, the Shah? Because Mossadegh, a university professor, had the nerve, the gall, to throw out, I believe it was called Anglo-Iranian oil at that time, and Standard Oil. Oh, didn't Anglo-Iranian become BP? You know, those people that poisoned the Gulf? Yeah, that one. And wasn't the Shah this brutal dictator that suppressed dissent, and the Stavak, the secret police, was only second to the SS? And then when the revolution started, Jimmy Carter saying that the Shah was the island of stability in the Middle East and how the Shah would never be overthrown, and how that wonderful dictator was our wonderful friend.
Just
and
like
wasn't it under Carter
Mubarak.
and under Reagan that they started the Iraq War against Iran? You remember that wonderful photograph of Donald Rumsfeld